Thank you so much. Thank you very much. I've just come in from Charles de Gaulle Airport, where I was saying goodbye to a friend that I've known for 50 years. And as it is these days, there was this beautiful young hostess there, and I said to her, "Won't you take a photograph of us?" And as my friend Jewel disappeared, I explained to this young woman that we'd been friends for 50 years. And she was a young woman and she couldn't believe it. She said, 50 years. And I said, yes, 50 years. And we've known each other and all our ups and downs, and it's wonderful. She said, "You've really given me a lesson today. Thank you." And she took this beautiful picture of the two of us. Anyway, very big welcome to everybody tonight here. It's nighttime in Paris, dark wintertime. And it's always such a pleasure to greet you and to see you. And this is a especially interesting webinar that talks to special people and people who are questing for something. Let me just fill you in very, very rapidly, although most of you do know us. The Pass It On Network was created by Dr. Jan Hively. And Jan, we're so pleased to see you here tonight after your adventures that you're getting out of right now. And myself in 2013. And we now have, and we're very proud of that fact, we now have people representing us in 65 different countries around the world. And that, I think, is one of our major achievements. So the Pasitov Network is here to advocate for older people like ourselves, and also to work towards the changing of society, or rather the adaptation of society to the changing world that we have today. So this is the important thing. And we operate through these monthly webinars that have been going now for a number of years. We've got a wonderful YouTube channel, which has a record of plus 39 videos at this point in time. And we have a gazette that is a periodic gazette. And then we have developed regional networks, like, for example, in Southern Africa, where we have a regional network with about 8 different countries taking part. So our aim is to unite people like ourselves who are striving for a better life for everybody. And with that, I think, Osnat, we've got such a full agenda tonight. I'd like to hand over to you straight away.
Well, thank you, Moira. Yes, welcome everybody. And I just wanted to say a couple of things. What we're going to do now is I'm going to speak for hopefully no more than 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, and tell you about this informal survey that we sent to everybody in Pass It On Network a few weeks ago. And it was informal and non-scholarly, and we didn't intend to create any charts and graphs and anything. It's more kind of a snapshot of how we see something that has come up frequently in our 50-50 conversations over the past 3 years. And the question is, what gives life meaning as we age? And what we're going to do today is look at the challenges and opportunities in supporting spiritual well-being as we age. If you remember last month, we spoke about different sub-generations in the 60 plus age group. And I just wanted to bring back that astonishing, remarkable piece of information that if you consider that it's for the first time in human history, most people can expect to live into their 60s. In some more comfortable countries, they live a lot longer. In other countries, reaching 60 used to be a challenge. And by 2050, there'll be about 2 billion people over the age of 60. The thing is that these are not just numbers. They represent real lives, real experiences. And often in our monthly conversation, you've shared something crucial. While we've gotten better at meeting physical needs, the food, shelter, healthcare, meetings, another dimension is often overlooked. When we talk about aging well, we're also talking about meaning, purpose, and connection. And that's what prompted this inquiry into spirituality and aging. We wanted to understand how this deeper dimension shapes our communities and the lives and our lives as we age. So this, inhale this image. It's quite profound. And now we're going to look at what we actually asked you. We asked 4 questions. I'm not going to read them. You're going to get them in the slides later. And if you answer the questionnaire, the survey, then you're probably familiar with them. These questions explored your personal experience, your observations in working with older adults, what you think matter most, and what currently is missing in policies and programs. You know, when we talk about advocacy, some people might think that it is just for organizations or activists. But really, if you think about it, advocacy happens at every level, whether you are standing up for yourself, supporting local community, or tackling bigger societal changes. Each of us is already an advocate in our own way. So who was answering this survey? As I said before, we were not looking for graphs or charts or some true quantitative data, but we got 42 responses. We had 1 response from our 90-plus person. We had 19 responses from 75 to 89, 18 responses from 60 to 74, and younger than 60, there were 4 responses. I think it tells a lot just there of who is interested and what is important to you and to all of us in this arena of what brings meaning and purpose in your life. There were 10 countries where we got the responses from, most of them from the US. And each story painted unique picture of spirituality and aging as you experience it. Let's pause for a moment to consider what we mean by spirituality. We define spirituality broadly as a personal quest for meaning and connection to something greater than ourselves. This definition deliberately leaves room for both religious and non-religious perspectives. And just a word about religious and non-religious, they have many things in common. Both of them involve personal transformation and search for truth and meaning, and both may involve contemplative activities. So it's not easy to distinguish between religious and non-religious. But one thing that really stood out was how differently people approach this quest, the quest for something bigger than ourselves. And some find it through traditional religious practices, and many discover it through serving their communities. Everyone is looking for meaning in their own way, and each path is unique, yet each seeking similar fundamental thing, meaning, purpose, and connection. So what's age has to do with spirituality? Well, evidently quite a bit. Actually, living longer doesn't necessarily mean living better. And we've seen how spirituality helps people cope with stress and find meaning, especially during life's challenges. You pause for a second and let's think about it. It happens in every age. And what we saw in this informal survey, that people under 60 focused on creating support systems. And people in their 60s and 70s spoke about personal growth and community. When you get to over 75, reflect on acceptance and transcendence, and our 90 plus emphasized ongoing engagement and contribution. So when you look at these are not rigid set in stone categories. They're just a snapshot of these 42 people that told us their stories. They suggest possibilities rather than predict the future. Today's young people, and we have a few here on the call with us, might express their spirituality very differently when they reach older age. What's particularly interesting is how these patterns suggest different approaches to finding meaning and purpose. There were two themes that kept showing up in almost every response: the desire to remain engaged with society and the deep value of community connections. So let me share just a couple of examples that relate to what we're seeing here on the screen. We had in the survey, one 85-year-old participant described starting a community garden that brings together people of all ages. Another one responded from France, spoke about a group in France that created a multi-faith discussion circle that has become a vital support system for its members. These aren't just nice to have features. They are practical challenges that shape how we think about supporting aging population. So how can we ensure these opportunities are available to everyone? In your responses, there were three main gaps that we need to address. We need more robust community initiatives that support diverse spiritual needs. As an example, there's a retirement community that currently offering mostly religious services while missing other forms of spiritual support. Our healthcare system needs better integrated spiritual support. And here's another example. There's a hospital program that will integrate spiritual care option into their standard protocols, but not yet. And we need policies, then education that recognizes this full spectrum of spiritual needs in aging. Local initiatives that would advocate for including spiritual care in elder care guidelines. We don't have it yet, and this is something to work towards. Each of these gaps, community support for diverse spiritual needs, spiritual support for integrated into healthcare system, and policies and services that recognize spiritual needs for older adults. Each one presents an opportunity for meaningful change. And let's see how. This is where we come in as pioneers, where we can advocate for change in ways that work for us and our communities. Whether it's honoring individual needs, individual choices, ensuring programs that are accessible to everybody, or building bridges between different cultural approaches and generations, there's room for everyone to contribute. So as pioneers, we're uniquely positioned to address these gaps. Here's some practical approach. I'll start with community support. So for community support, we can create inclusive discussion groups or develop access to spiritual activities of choice, or building in intergenerational programs and meaningful connections. Just three examples in our survey results that we sent to all of you. There are more. For healthcare integration, advocating for a holistic care approach that includes all options to anybody who wants it. Training healthcare providers, giving them the language to speak about it and bringing up the awareness. And developing spiritual care protocol for end of life. This came up several times where we speak about everything, but stay away from end of life. And for policy development, here are a few examples: advocate for including spiritual care in elder care guidelines, establish quality standards and guidelines for inclusive spiritual care, and build coalition of stakeholders for inclusive spiritual support. That could be community activity and healthcare organizations or things of that nature. The key is going after what calls your name. It doesn't say anywhere that you have to be active in something that you don't feel drawn to. And I invite you to take a moment to consider which of these areas speaks to your experience or interest. And that's it. This is how change spreads through connections, through sharing, through adaptation. Solutions that we find in one community can inspire adaptation in another. In Pastor Network, we do it so well. We have here people from all these different countries, and we know that something that works in Canada with some adaptation can work in Slovenia, for example. So your involvement matters. Whether you are starting a conversation in your community, like what we do now, sharing successful programs, tell about your successes, tell it to anybody who wants to hear. There's always something there for somebody. Advocating for policy change. We heard here back in July from Janine Vanderberg how we can hold our elected officials accountable, or simply participating in these discussions. Just being there and increasing your own awareness. So each contribution adds to our collective understanding and capacity for change. And this is what makes Pion Aceton Network special. And that's what makes us hopeful about where we're heading together. And this is where we are. 2 prompts. You can use them if you want or speak about anything else. There are 2 to 3 people in each room, and we'll see you back in 12 minutes. Maybe I should just say what is it that we're asking from the survey finding, what surprised you or challenged your assumptions about spirituality and aging, and why? And the second one is, which gap resonates most with your experience in your community, work, or personal life? What makes addressing these gaps challenging? So everybody's okay. I'm going to send you for 12 minutes in 2 breakout rooms and see you in a few. What surprised you? What challenged your assumptions?
I found this, I didn't respond because I was out, but today I say I have to be there. Excuse how to, and so what I read, all this you crafted or someone crafted, must have been you. It was very valuable and very insightful. So it is interesting. And if I tell you what, it didn't surprise me, but I loved it, that here we don't speak about rights. Wonderful. What a change of perspective that even so addresses so much of what everybody needs in their different ways of cultivating purpose, meaning, and connection. So these are very good, wonderful. So that's for me. And I want to listen to Anna.
Hear me?
Yes.
So I'm not from English speaking country, but
Neither is Sylvia nor
best.
I. Good.
Yeah, well, I'm the president of Third Age University, and we meet a lot of older people. We have a relatively big number of our students who come together, and we designed it so that the groups are small, and usually they go in November. They would go, the fluctuation becomes, they would go from one group to another, from one mentor to another. And why? I will tell you why, because it's connected with our basic question. The reason of this fluctuation, which is their decision to have the same subject but in different mentor with different and in different group. It is not the case in the regular schools, but it's the case among old people. We noticed made the research very high, and the reasons why. Well, our groups are relatively small, are about 12 to 15 students and tutor. And this friendly connection becomes very strong. They belong to this group and they have, as I say, a primary social group or a second family here. And if I observe them, I would say that with the age, you go basically from quantity in your life to quality in your life. You can afford quality. They say when they change the groups, they would say, no, I wouldn't stay in the previous group because one person in the group gets too much in my nerves. Yeah. Or so, or I would not learn enough with this tutor. But usually it's a problem that human relations must be of a very good and deep and open human relations, which we are equality, human relations which we are looking for in adulthood. And more, I recently read about national calculation, how many people are without religion in Sweden. I was surprised that 95% people decided had no religion. But I was surprised with a very high number. But they find their basic, what would I say, motives that they are human being, responsible, and we are a social being. We cannot live lonely, and this is a problem of many old people because we are lonely regularly. If I observe ours, is that you have a substitute for your family. Children, also in America, even more than in our country, they go away, they would live in the other part of the country, they have their family, they have their profession and so on. So they don't, very rare, they would have contacts with their parents before, maybe on phone or Zoom or so, but not really in a person. And the lack of social relations create certain dimensions of personality that they don't care about material things so much as they do primarily about social dimension and about mental things and so on. I don't know if I was clear enough.
Yeah, well, two things. First, I want to welcome Nancy. Nancy, everybody else is in breakout rooms. We're going to be here for another 3 minutes, our little breakout room. We're talking about expressions of spirituality in various places. And Anna, it's very striking to me. I have not considered this before, that your social capital, in a way, has such an impact on your material needs that you crave the connection more than you crave anything else. It's
yeah, in people, we discovered that really we depend very much on the social relation. And when you work, you make your career, you have to work with people who are there. You have to adjust, you have to deny your needs, psychological needs. But I noticed that the old people are not ready to deny the needs they have. Not anymore. And this is one deep part of this what would I say, spirituality.
Yeah.
In a way, without religion, they don't talk about. Here in our country is basically Catholic, but you can find many immigrants which are different religions. People don't talk. It's very personal things, but they do care what kind of relations, social relations they would have. And if you if we discuss what is our purpose of living and so on, there was a very known psychologist from Vienna, Frankl. Maybe you have read his books.
Victor?
Yeah, and he was exploring this, how much it is stronger than the natural needs we have as a human being, like Maslow said, Abraham. But he was in a concentrating camp, and he was already a psychologist, graduated, and he graduated medicine. And he saw that people knew that they will die, but they would have a purpose to give and leave the food to a person, father of 7 children who waited home for him to come back from concentrating camp.
Yeah.
From the purpose, the person had a purpose to live for.
Here's everybody's coming back.
Right. Hi.
Hi.
So was it an interesting conversation?
Yes.
Yes, hopefully. You know, I think we've captured everybody. No one's lost. We have a
No.
couple of new people, and this is if you had an interesting conversation in your breakout rooms, this is probably a good time to ask in that conversation that you have, what kind of insights or questions? This is not a reporting of what happened in your room, but for you, what is it something that you would like to share with the whole group? What was something that was important enough that everybody needs to hear?
What I saw in our group, not the content, but I think it's really dependent on where you live. You can have spirituality within yourself, but your possibility of becoming more attached and stuff really depends on where you are. For me, it's even though I've been living in Europe over 50 years, I didn't find the connection that I had when I was growing up in New York on Staten Island with our community, church community. It was like a family, a big family supporting each other. And I don't have that here in Austria. So I think it really depends on where you live also to a certain extent. I don't know how much.
Any other thoughts?
To the lady who just said she's from Austria, I've got a good friend in Vienna. If you're in Vienna, I can introduce you to her. We lost one lady in our meet room, but there was a gentleman there called Isaac, and we are very much of different age groups. And we had, I thought, quite a good conversation, and I'd like to know what he thought of the conversation.
Well, Isaac, if you want to speak, and then we'll move to Adele after you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. I suppose the one thing I would add is that
Can you speak up? We can't hear you very well.
oh, yeah, of course. How's this?
Much better.
Hello. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I suppose the one thing I would add is that spirituality, and whether you subscribe or follow one particular religion or if it's more of a personal journey, um, is just that, a very personal journey that is shaped by your own experiences, your own uh, conclusions that you've drawn from being witness to the things that happen in the world. Um, and because of that, a lot of people have very different conclusions and have very different ideas, and see things very differently, not in one particular way or another. It's just that it's different conclusions that people have um, arrived to, whether, whatever the details might be. Um, what what me and Valerie spoke about was the importance of, I believe, the importance of appreciation of that, of understanding that whilst some people might view their spirituality in different ways or have come to terms with it in different ways, um, there's that innate human experience that we share, and that is knowing or believing and tying yourself to something that will nurture you or look after you when you need it most. And that's the problem, I think, that sometimes we run into when we feel very passionate about these things. It feels strange when somebody maybe doesn't see it that way. And it's because they're very, very personal and deep connections that we've made with a lot of time and a lot of experience and a lot of um, different details. So yeah, if I would add one thing, I would say it would be very nice to, in addition to the things that we suggested, in terms of community support, healthcare interaction, and policy development, maybe also just having spaces to talk about these things. I mean, I envision it as sitting at a table and sharing my own spirituality and hearing from people and their spirituality and learning about what is meaningful to them, and maybe seeing how we maybe came from very different places, but somehow we ended up at the same conclusion. Or maybe, like was spoken before, maybe we're from the same place and we ended up with completely different conclusions. um so yeah, and I think underneath all that is the appreciation for what is special to you, what is special to me, and learning to appreciate that as a whole. So yeah.
Thank you, Isaac. Adele?
I had raised my hand because I actually wanted to respond a little bit to what Jackie said. If I heard her correctly, that in the current environment, she's not finding the same kind of, could I use the word supportive network that she had growing up. And I wonder if that's a function of the age at which one moves. My own experience has been that it is very hard to create a new circle in adulthood. I guess I found this when I was working in the US and bringing people from Canada to the US. And they found it very difficult to break into American circles because they didn't have a common, they didn't have anything in common from their upbringing. And I wonder how much, I think as we get older, to break into new circles, we have to make much more of an effort than we had to when we were younger. When we were younger, they form naturally, whether they form through schools or they form through children and parents of children's friends. Some of those groups naturally come together, and as one gets older, those common grounds aren't there anymore. And I just wondered, Jackie, if that was part of what you were experiencing.
I came here when I was 21. So, and I'm 73 now, so many years. But I think it's not only, if you come here and then you get married and have children and you're still a student at the university, you have a completely different life, and you don't have the chance to go out with the students, or normal student life that you'd have on a campus in the States or anywhere. So if I compare myself to my daughter, that she had that opportunity by having children and being able, she didn't work, she was home for the 9 years, but my husband and I didn't have the money, so we both had to work as students and had 2 children. So it was a completely different atmosphere that we couldn't hook up at, even at a young age. Okay. But I think it's different here in especially in Vienna. Maybe there are good communities of church and stuff, but I never found that I or any other organization, even though I have a self-help group for stroke patients for 48 years, and I give them support, and they give me back a lot of support also. But that's completely different. That's from my professional thing of doing research on language disorders. But I think it was different. I felt it all the time as a student. You were different because you were married and you had a child already at a young age. Yeah. So, yeah. So.
Very, very interesting. We're hearing here a few positions about a few insights about barriers for support, barriers for finding community, barriers for integrating your needs in the community, whether you're new to it or just changing your age. I want to point to something that Anna from Slovenia said in our breakout room, that comes a time, especially from her experience in the university, comes a time when you get older and your material needs are the desire for material needs diminishes by comparison to your desire to have more meaningful connections and meaningful emotional and spiritual support from your environment. And there are some ways that the people she knows are dealing with this. And maybe 2 things. Maybe Anna, you can tell everybody what are the ways that the older people in your circle are increasing their, let's say, their spiritual capital from their environment. And for the rest of us, have you seen anywhere something that works?
So what we were discussing before is what our experience was. We have a few thousand of students, which are all old people after 60, retired people, that their attitudes have changed from quantitative things to qualitative, to quality. And they don't care about material things so much, but they care basically what kind of relations they have with people and what kind of people they meet. For example, our groups are very small. The study groups are 12 to 15 people with tutor. And sometimes friends become a previous director or a physician with a patient. It's not a difference. They count the personality. What kind of relations can you have with certain person? And they are very, I would say they change their groups. The fluctuation in November is very big. In our university is nothing to be compared with the primary school or secondary school or any studies the regular universities have, because our students, upon their own decision, they would leave the groups they enrolled and they would go to another group. And when we ask, what will you study now? No, the same. I will study the same, but with a different mentor. Or a person in the group gets on my nerves, me so much that I wouldn't feel nicely in this group. And I want to change. You see, we are ready to select things, to make decisions. They do the decisions themselves, and they go from one group to another. And when they finally get in the group, they feel very well. Then they stay for 30 years, even 35 years. We have students. It is not the school which lasts 2 years or 4 years, but the students are with us. It's a snowball effect. They stay and they remain to the end of life with us. As long as they can follow us. I have one group on Zoom because they cannot walk very well anymore and so on. And we have several groups on Zoom because especially in the winter, it's more convenient to learn from home. But they are learning and they are this is, I think, their spirituality. They are aware that they are social being and they don't want to be alone at home.
Yeah.
One aging. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Anna. So this is one way we can do. I think it refers back to something Isaac said before. Why can't we just get together and talk and hear what everybody has to say? And this is a great way to use your own agency to create the circle that supports you the most. Lyle and then Tom.
Oh, thank you, Osmed. And Anna, I was interested in your comments just now about the shift from quantity to quality. And I was also interested in your backdrop, your painting and your statue, which show the breadth of your thought, I think. And I'm just interested to notice that about 3/4 of the too small group involved in today's topic are female. And I'm certainly interested in my breakout group in Moira's comments about personalizing the quest for spirituality and taking a broader view. And I made the comment in our group that from the survey, I was struck by the fact that 90+ people stressed ongoing involvement and content and connection. And I would quote at this stage Bert Lancaster, who said, "Be picky about what you do and keep on doing it." Is my sound not very good?
Your sound is excellent.
Okay. I'm getting a bit of feedback. So I think it's very important that we do broaden our own definitions of spirituality and we shake off some of the more destructive aspects for some people of overly religious and dogmatic thinking, although you can't generalize. And I think it's important to trust our own intuition more, that inner knowledge, which you can understand psychologically, or you can understand in terms of that broader transcendent connection. But one thing I think we need to do to follow through today's topic is to have a future topic, and of course it's connected, on death and dying. And I think of that quote, which I'll paraphrase: "We have 2 lives. The second begins when we realize we only have one." And I would add, and we realize that the sand is running very quickly through the hourglass. So perhaps we could follow this through at some stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Lyle. Thank you. Tom Mottle.
Thank you, I apologize to everybody for coming in late. And when I saw the title for the session today, spirituality and aging, I'm in a position in my life as the way in which age is categorized, I saw recently as the old, or the young old, the old, and the old, which is the old, it's my category. I'm 87, and the old is categorized as over 85. And spirituality has a lot of meanings. And what I've been hearing and listening to what the comments are is that in the young old, it's about socialization and contact with people relating to your relationships and your feelings and so forth, which spans a broad spectrum of issues and topics. But as you transition onward to the old and then the very old, or the old, it becomes perhaps more of an emphasis on an individual's concept and perspectives on what life is in the broadest sense. And that, of course, depends on your cultural background, your personality, your experience in growing up. And in my own situation, I recently lost my soulmate and life partner of 63 years. And so I've been working my way through grief and mourning. And I've attended some group grief counseling sessions and listening to other people. It's been very interesting, ranging from people that have a very strong religious belief, represented perhaps by Catholic faith, and a total trust and faith in God, to my own position as a Unitarian, if all of you know what that is, which is more a reliance on your sense of being an individual and your relationship with other people and all the different elements that comprise the world we live in. And with that, I'll leave it.
Thank you, Tom. Definitely, there's as we said in the beginning, there's room for this entire continuum between religion and personal philosophies and anything in between. And we heard several introspections from people here today. And I'm wondering that we are all involved in one way or the other in advocacy. And the people here around this proverbial campfire have a lot of self-agency, and we know how to take care of ourselves. And the question that I have is, what support do you think the community can give to people who are not as well-equipped as we are, to people who are lost? And it's not necessary, I mean, today there are religious organizations are very strong. There are churches, they have hospitals, they have all kinds of organizations, but they give a lot of organized support. People who are not following this persuasion find themselves often trying to create their own circles themselves. And I'm wondering if, as we said before, if through policy or through community activity or through healthcare, is there a way to reach the people who are not as well equipped to help themselves? Have you seen anything like this?
Astig, this is Nancy. May I respond?
Yes, Nancy. Sure.
Thank you. Hi. I had shared about this a couple of years ago in this group, but I'm a really big believer in community outreach, and that old adage of, bloom where you're planted, and the opportunities that we have to influence locally. And so I have done a lot of projects in that area. Actually, while I was still working full-time and certainly in retirement the last 20 years. But a couple of things that I've done that relate to this topic is we are in our 16th year now of meeting as an aging well learning community. We meet every month, and we have completed 16 years, and we're moving into year 17. And that has been a place where we've talked about a lot of spiritual issues with one another and the other challenges and opportunities of aging, and learned a lot and supported each other as we've moved through this stage of our life. And that's been very meaningful for a lot of people, including me. the other thing that I've done is that out here where we live, east of Seattle, and this really was a project that was kicked off because of the Islamophobia that was going on, is that we formed a world religions group here, and we would get together every 3 months and choose a topic that many of the world religions taught about within their tradition and come together and hear some brief text from that particular perspective. And so it ended up being a panel with different traditions talking about the same issue. For example, kindness or hospitality. And then we would break down into diverse small groups that were set up so that they were people of different backgrounds, religiously and spiritually, in the same conversation, and talk about what those teachings really mean to us and how we live them. And that for me was very meaningful because I learned how much we have in common across the spectrum, regardless of whether you're spiritual or you would not define yourself that way at all, or you come from a very, one of the world wisdom traditions, is that there's so much we have in common. So personally, I have felt it's been a chance to learn, which I really appreciate. It's been a chance to get to know people that normally I wouldn't have a chance to get to know. It's given me a sense of belonging to our world community, not just to my own little communities. And so it's been very, very valuable. Unfortunately, we haven't done it since the pandemic, but it's something we probably should restart. So for me and for the people who attend regularly, being part of a community group really makes a huge difference in one's life.
Yes, I think the pandemic taught us all the value or the irreplaceable value of community in more than one way. You wouldn't believe it, but it's already 7 minutes after the hour. So we're kind of approaching the end of the formal part of this discussion. And we heard all kinds of things today. We heard about hurdles, we heard about solutions, we heard about what some communities are doing as a communities, what some people are doing as an individual. And maybe two reflective questions that I would like to throw into the room is, what is one insight that you're taking for yourself today? What kind of different possibilities do you see now? What can happen now that you did not consider before? Sure, Valerie.
I've just had rather distressing news. I'm being investigated to see if I have cancer. And somehow we tend to think we're going to live forever. And of course, we know that we all are not going to live forever. We might leave a legacy behind, if that would be nice. But it's given me a time to think. Not much time, actually. It only happened earlier in this month, November. And I must say, I'm very impressed with the National Health. They've got appointments out very quickly and things are happening at a great speed, which is good, but it also is a bit shocking. I don't know. I don't think I've got cancer, but the doctors are investigating. So it gives me time to think, what do I want to do? And I think I've decided that I want to leave with dignity. I know that cancer treatment has got better. I know that the way my mother died is not what I would want for myself. She died of cancer. And I've decided that I would like to have fun. A friend of mine, when he was 86, he, of course, in those days, it was more difficult, the treatment, and it's better now, but he decided to go off on his boat with his son. He went off on his boat for 6 months. They had good times together, lasting memories. And then he came back, sold the boat, booked into a hospice, and died with dignity. And I feel that now there are some politicians in Britain who are advocating that we should have a choice of saying, this is how we want to go when it's our time to go. I'm not in any great rush. I'm going to stay here for as long as I can, and as long as I'm having fun, and as long as I'm achieving things. And my project, Learn with Grandma, some of you may know, we've been friends for a long time. I've not been on the link recently because I got involved with something else called Humanity, which was very exciting. Anyhow, just think about this. How would you like to leave? What do you want to leave behind? That's it. God bless.
Such an important question. Kind of ties back to what Tom was talking about. So many interesting notes in the chat. I want to take this last 4 minutes of our official part to tell you that I wasn't sure where this conversation was going, and maybe some of you had certain expectations and others different expectations. To me, it's an unfinished conversation. There are so many things came up here that each one of them deserves its own hour. The thing that I'm taking from here is that there's a place for everybody and anybody to do something, even if it's about your neighbor down the hall, down the street, or some of the things like some of us here who are part of larger communities are doing very consistently over years, or maybe we'll start doing it tomorrow. And I don't know if there's a right way to stop this. I think one thing is that to continue to believe that we can make a change, continue to be here part of Passiton Network and spread the change to everybody we know, and live a good life and be good people.
Actually, one little thing that you could do, I'm going to start a new project for this Christmas. I asked people to plant trees for my birthday a few years ago, and over 3 million were planted because I sent the message around the world. Well, I've now decided with all these wars in Europe and in Gaza and so on and so forth, we really need some peace. So plant a tree for peace for Christmas.
Excellent. Thank you, Valerie.
So that's a little thing, but little things can grow.
Yeah. And now we're going to complete our call formally, and we're going to leave the session open for another 15 minutes for anybody who didn't get to say what they wanted to say. It doesn't have to be about spirituality, but why not? It can be about some new things that you saw, learn, and want to share with Passiton Network members everywhere. And that's the opportunity. And if you need to leave, please do our survey, and we hope to see you next month. Thank you very much. That's it. And this is now the unscripted anything 15 minutes for anybody who wants to say something. Or not.
Or not.
This is Nancy. I'm delighted to see this topic. I think it's extremely important. As an 82-year-old, and a social scientist, I'm looking at the patterns in the world about how younger people are moving away from organized religion, and at the same time experiencing a critical level of loneliness and mental health problems, and are talking about social isolation. And I took a wonderful course through Well Connected that was on world religions, taught by a woman who's a scholar in that area. And we studied many of the world religions. And one of the things she said that really stuck with me is that there are 3 characteristics of religion, regardless of what religion you're talking about, that are constant across the traditions: belief, belonging, and behavior. And so when I think about younger people and the crisis of loneliness and how that's leading to serious mental health problems and high rates of suicide among the young. Much of that has to do with feeling like they don't belong anywhere. They're not loved, they're not known, they're not connected in ways that are meaningful and heartfelt for them and that meet their needs. And that's a very critical issue from a mental health and a physical health point of view. So just, thinking about where are we at with all these issues, I think is very important if we care about not only our own age cohort, but younger people who are coming after us. And I see the same kind of thing happening with this, in my opinion, horrific election result that we just got in the United States is confusion about the difference between the sort of dogmatic beliefs and really living the basic wisdom teachings of our tradition. So I'm delighted that you chose to do this. I think it's really important. I'd love to see us do more work in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Tom Mottle.
Nancy, I'd be curious what your thoughts might be listening to what you just said about what's generally characterized in the popular media, and not in the popular media, but in the media in general, in the good media, as a falling off of strong, some would say narrower religious beliefs in a supreme being and so forth. And that in turn reflecting on how one copes with the ultimate questions, which a very strong belief in religion provides very convenient answers. If you don't mind, I'll tell a little story from my group grief counseling. There were 12 of us, and interestingly, there were 5 men among the 12, which I think I find very unusual because men don't like to really talk about feelings and grief. But this one individual who had lost his wife a few years earlier I think he was Catholic, had a very, very firm belief in a God of the Catholic tradition, which took care of his wife and took care of him and so forth. And in listening to him as a Unitarian, I put up my hand and I said, I'll be careful. I don't want to offend anybody, but I'll say, first of all, I respect, I admire, and I'm envious of your belief because it provides you such a strong answer. And I said, my own beliefs, which some people don't consider Unitarianism a religion, but rather a philosophy, are very different. And I said I'd like to tell a small joke that a friend of mine, and perhaps some of you know Richard Adler. Richard told me this joke that one time, a long time ago, we were talking about religion and faith and philosophy, and I said I was a Unitarian. He said, oh, I have a good joke that you'll enjoy as a Unitarian. There was a Unitarian talking to a Catholic about what happens when you die. And the Unitarian said to the Catholic, you go first. He says, well, you go to heaven and the clouds open and God is there and he greets you and so forth. He says, what do you think? He says, well, when I die, I'm sure what'll happen is I'll call a committee meeting and we'll try and figure out what the hell just happened. And, to me, that's, for me personally, my personality, my upbringing, my culture and so forth. It's the strength of the ties to other people and the world in its broadest sense, and the belief in noumenological as well as phenomenological aspects of life or intellectual things. I'm happy with where I'm at, but I am a little envious of people, and I wish them well, and the blessings to them. But I'm just curious, Nancy, do you think that this fall off in religion is contributing to the rise in suicide rates and so forth?
Yeah, I do. I think it is certainly one of the contributors because we as human beings need to belong somewhere in a way that is satisfying and meaningful for us. And as this woman who taught the courses that I've taken said, that's one of the key characteristics of world religions. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about Judaism or Islam or Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity. They, is belonging somewhere, to a faith community like you in your Unitarian community. And I have friends who are Unitarians as well that find meaning there and support there. And if you don't have that, then you feel very alone, you know. And then I think especially one of the interesting things that's happening in my point of view is that with people, at least in the United States, delaying becoming parents until they're in their 40s, is that they have this extended period of young adulthood where there's some fragmentation of their support group and people are going in different directions. So some people do have children earlier and get engaged in that part of life, and some don't. But it ends up with feeling left behind for a lot of people, and that's a very painful place for people to be in. So yeah, I think that's a real issue that certainly concerns me as a mother. You know, my own son, I'm a progressive Catholic, but a great appreciator of world religions, and have learned a lot from them, and appreciate what we have in common, which is an awful lot. So I guess there's a good part of me that's Unitarian also. And a big part of me that's spiritual, you know, that really gets my relationship with the divine through being in nature, which I spend a lot of time in. But I'm really concerned about younger people that are coming after us. I think they're going to be in big trouble. I think they already are in big trouble, and I think it's going to get more severe, and I'm concerned for their well-being.
There's one young person here in our midst. Do you have any views on that?
Sure. So, for context, I'm 23 years old. I'm actually wearing my college hoodie right now. Um, this is, I guess I can't really provide a good answer if I don't share a little bit about my background. So uh, I was born in Santiago, Chile, which is a very Catholic nation. So in many cases of Chilean society, sometimes there's that sort of mix between culture and spirituality that fuse into one. Um, I mean, in Spanish, we have a saying where, um, if something good happens, you say gracias a Dios, like thanks be to God. You don't have to be religious to say it. It's just kind of part of the language. You kind of say it. Um, but I grew up Catholic. I am not Catholic anymore. It was a journey that has been ongoing, I think, for the past 4 years. Certainly, um, not been the greatest or nicest journey to be on in terms of kind of being stuck in that unknown that you were kind of mentioning, Nancy. But I guess I'll spare a bit of those details because what I really want to share is what's happening now, right? Because for a moment I was in that unknown. When I realized that maybe I wanted to explore or understand other ways in that other people were looking at the world. Um, at first, I had to come to terms with that because that in and of itself was a very painful realization to come to. But then I also had to open myself up and understand just how other people were looking at the world. Um, and I guess that's when that void came in, where I didn't really think about anything really in terms of spirituality. I was just kind of in that transitional period, I think, where I didn't think anything, and I guess I was just kind of learning or trying to build up a foundation again for my spirituality. Um, so it's still ongoing. I definitely haven't reached any conclusions yet. But what has allowed for me to for that to take place, or what has allowed me to do what I'm doing right now, is that I'm able to appreciate how other people see the world. So, for example, even though I'm not religious, I maybe 4 years ago I might have felt very strongly against it, but now it means the world to me when somebody says that they pray for me, right? It means the world to me because I know when somebody does that action, it means that they're they're wishing full with their full heart that they wish the best onto you, and whatever aspect that might be, whether it is you pray to a god or if there's in any way that you might want to manifest it. I have come to terms that I should appreciate that wholeheartedly because it's someone showing their love to me and their care for me. Um, but in terms of young people maybe feeling lost, there's a millions and millions and millions of factors at play that I don't think can be answered with one straight shot. There's always a wide variety of factors. I mean, I remember in my university class, we read about in my sociology of mental illness class, excuse me, we read a book about Russian youth in the late 19th century and early 20th century, right when there was that transition in government between the Tsar and the communist government. And because there was that political turmoil, a lot of Russian youth expressed in poetry in school. It was like examining diaries, letter entries. A lot of them felt very lost as well, a lot of Russian youth. And they expressed hopelessness at the future or at the fact that nothing made sense to them anymore. Um, so I definitely see what you're saying, Nancy, and I really appreciate that because I think it's what we need. It's what we've always needed. I mean, these conversations probably took place thousands and thousands of years ago when, in ancient Egyptian traditions, when people had different uh, ways of viewing the world and things like that. So I'm sure that those conversations would have come up at that point in ancient Egypt as well. So I think that's what's most important, because to me, when I learned to build my foundation for my spirituality, when I had changed paths a bit, it was in those in between times. It was when I was staring out the window of a car or out the window of a train, or maybe listening to a song that sort of sparked something inside me that made me want to think about something, maybe examine things more closely. If I did get maybe kind of irrationally angry at something, taking the time to maybe take a pause and say, well, why did I get angry at that? And kind of reflecting that. Um, I think instilling that and allowing people to pursue that journey of introspection and self-reflection is what will eventually lead people to understand, okay, this is where I sit on this. Maybe these are the things that I want to hug and attach myself to. These are the things that mean the most to me. And learning to appreciate that because that's a form of expression of love and community that in the end, that's what's gonna tie us to ourselves. So yeah,
You
I
just
don't know if that made any sense, but it's kind
makes
of
a
what
lot
I
of sense to me because you described to me what Unitarianism is all about to me individually as a person.
Oh. Well, this is really interesting, and we're actually at time. I'm listening to you, Isaac. I'm listening to you, Tom, and Nancy, and everybody else who spoke, and it transcends age. These connections, these conversations, this giving each other permission to investigate what is going to help you keep growing and keep connecting need to happen. And have these conversations, help others who don't have an opportunity to have these conversations, have them, regardless of their age, regardless of the generational gap. These things are helpful and are going to make our community at large stronger and more sustainable. And
I just
I'm
want to say
sorry
thanks. I
yeah.
just want to say thanks to you, Isaac, for attending these meetings. Thanks so much.
Yeah, definitely.
We had a lovely conversation, and I'm very pleased to hear more from him. As far as I'm concerned, I'm out of the question about religion because I don't get it anymore. I have a personal relationship with God. I wear my cross every day. I say my prayers every day, and I crack on and do the best I can.
Yeah.
And that's really all we can do. None of us can change the world, but we can, in little ways, change the world. Can I just say my prayer that I say every morning? Dear Lord, in all I do and say, remind me that there's just one way to do the things that I do best, to put my mind and heart and soul at rest, and that's to put in your great hands my life that you alone have planned. Sometimes I'm in such a muddle, I don't know which way to go. And having this latest thing about the cancer being thrown at me from off field, all of that is painful. But I can talk to God and crack on. That's the best we can do, isn't it? We can all do the little things. We individuals can't do the big things, but it's only individuals that can change the world. The man who started the Red Cross, he was a man in Switzerland, I've forgotten his name. The man who started Oxfam, he was a vicar in Oxford. You know, I've forgotten his name. It doesn't matter that we forget the person that started it. What was happened was something good was started and other people came along, joined in and kept it going. So
Wow.
keep
Valerie.
cracking on.
Yeah, Valerie, what a good way to end this session. I want to thank everybody for being here and carrying it through and carrying it forward. And we'll see you again on the 9th of December.